All right, so here with the Hibbards, so we're talking about No Screen November again. We're coming up on this year. Last year, the reason why we're doing this is because Sister Hayes and I spent a lot of time talking at people, giving our perspective on it, but now we actually had a year where people tried it, and it's not just us anymore. So there's dozens of people we could have pulled from, and we just ran out of time, but was hoping you guys could just kind of tell us a little bit about how that went. So first of all, we're sitting at the beginning of this, and I know there are parents who hear this challenge that might be new to the school or maybe didn't want to try it last time, that it sounds a little bit crazy to go screen-free for a month, especially for kids. Last year, you guys kind of jumped in with both feet, but what were some of the fears and the concerns going into it that you guys had?
I think there were logistical worries, like how are we going to, especially with our teenagers, how are we going to keep the teenagers off of their phones? That was one of our concerns. Another one, as teachers, we were worried about like how we're going to keep track of grading and all of that stuff, which we just did it on paper like they did in the old days. Like that actually wasn't that bad.
There was a lot of just taking it from the perspective of a parent, an adult. Like we're on screens all the time too.
Yeah.
How do we manage that?
Especially because I love to game. I do. I love video games. I love silly solitaire games on my phone. All kinds of stuff, and that was hard. I think for me, I knew that I needed it. I knew that I needed it for me, and was recognizing, reading the research, and seeing, I think I have more problems with this than maybe some of my children do. So those were all concerns that we had about how to proceed and how to be a good example as well, because it wasn't like we were just going to make our kids do it and we're going to be in screens in front of you. You guys are out of luck.
Go in the book.
Yeah, that's going to go really well.
It never does.
They're not going to think that's problematic at all.
Yeah. So we definitely had to be on board with it and all in as well. So that was a bit of a concern that we had, but it didn't end up being. That part actually was easier than I thought it was going to be.
So it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, for you guys, the biggest concerns were managing it for yourselves.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, yes, my kids need it, but how do I do this? And
setting the example, yeah.
It was top of the list, but the kids were a concern too.
So what were some of the concerns with the kids then?
Again, mostly that they would be sneaking screens. We have some mobile devices. We have a tablet. My teenagers only have phones. We had, what else do we have? We had a couple Kindles, the Switch.
It's strange to realize when you start this, how many devices you have.
Yeah. And so we grabbed them all and we locked them up. We literally, physically grabbed them all and locked them up. And that, I think, was a big part of how we made it successful.
Awesome.
Even the teenagers' cell phones, which there was some pushback, but they were willing, because they have alarms on them. We just made it, for them that year anyway, they connected to a Bluetooth speaker in their room, so their alarms would still go off, and they couldn't turn them off. We had to turn them off, which was kind of nice.
So just get going.
The power, yeah. So they would get up, which was nice. So
okay,
yeah.
Awesome. So I think we had some similar concerns. I know a lot of people do, and I think that in and of itself just highlights what a challenge it is, because if we're worried that we have so little control or they have so little control that they're just going to want to sneak it, that kind of is evidence that
it's a red flag.
That's a red flag. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah.
I
deleted apps off my phones.
I would guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and even for myself, for this time around, I was looking up like how do you turn a smartphone into a dumb phone for myself, and one of the things I came across this Reddit post where it was an adult. It was like, look, I don't have control myself, so I can turn all these apps off, but they had to like log in they set up their phone as a child's phone, and their spouse was the parent, and so they would have to go ask for help. So kind of knowing your own weaknesses and setting up those boundaries to help you be successful.
Yeah.
I haven't figured out how to do that yet myself, but I was definitely
I'm gonna do some
intrigued.
research on
Yeah,
that.
this year's round too.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
And we're
We did more
excited.
stuff like that.
There are some things that we kept in force after we ended last year, and it has made a huge difference in our family. But there are some things that as the year has progressed, and here we are at November again, I'm like, okay, yeah, we totally need this
We
reset
backslid
yet
a little
again.
bit,
We've
yep.
backslid a little bit. We're not as bad as it was the first time through
Yeah.
by a long shot.
We're in
but
this about the last month. We've started letting some of our boundaries slide, and
Uh-huh.
it is like there's a lot of trepidation last time, but this time it's like, oh, thank goodness we need this.
this.
I remember how good it was when we had this in place, and I want that back. So it's kind of going through it a second time. It's a very different feeling for me.
Yeah.
So, all right, so you guys got in, you jumped in, you hid the phones away, and you got into the month. What did you see during the course of that month that made you say, hey, we want to keep a lot of these things in place in perpetuity?
Kids were getting along better. Well, one of our kids was really in books. I mean, just really got crazy with reading and was just able to interact so much more. She started speaking more, having more interpersonal relationships with her siblings. And she's autistic, so this was like a major thing.
Huge development, yeah.
Massive thing. And now I can't get her out of books. She doesn't care about shows at all. She still doesn't.
Awesome.
She never asks to watch the TV. She rarely asks to play a game. But that's not what she's into. She wants books all the time.
And that's a night and day change.
For
She
her, that was
always wanted a
extreme.
device. We had to really watch her, or she'd have someone's phone.
She'd be the one sneaking stuff. Yeah.
I remember, I think it was Bonnie that was saying that she came up and asked her, is it Thursday? And she just got excited. Yes, that means screens. Like she was.
Yes, she
Like that was-
screamed out loud in class. She's like, yes, electronics!
That's
That's what she screamed in class. And I, as her teacher, was like,
Oh shoot.
this is bad. This is my child doing this. So yeah, that was a shocker. That was last October that happened. I remember
It was
that.
good. It was well timed. Well timed.
was well
So you saw those benefits. They're working. They're getting along better. Into books, and so you've kept going. And I mean, we backslid too. But overall, did you see more improvement grow as time went on, or did you kind of get all that you got out of it from that first month?
No, as we kept it going, it definitely the interpersonal relationships in the family continued to grow. It wasn't until we started backsliding we noticed that things started cropping up again, and we feel like the way to get through that, or the way to combat that, is to do this reset again. Absolutely, and strictly, because it made such a massive difference. It hasn't been until September, October when we started really kind of letting a few things slide, letting the kids maybe play a video game during parent-teacher conference. That may have happened. It did happen. That all of a sudden we come home and everybody's at each other's throats. They're fighting again. And not everybody. Like I said, my young autistic one is like, nope, I would rather read a book.
She's still locked away.
But the other
she's
ones
good.
it's definitely a weakness for them. And we've noticed that some of the kids are more sensitive to screens than others. Some of them could handle maybe 30 minutes once a week. Other ones, it's like, nope, never. They cannot be in control. They cannot pick the show. It's more than they can handle for their brain. It's just too much.
Yeah.
And we saw them improve as time went by. So just that first month made a huge difference, but that continued to increase. And that's what doctors are saying, is it might, for some people, take even longer.
Yeah.
But
Sometimes they're seeing it build over years.
yeah, so it really takes kind of a lifestyle change to see the full benefit of it. But it's worth it.
Well, and it really is a change of, I mean, it's a virtual lifestyle versus actual lifestyle.
Like actual living,
right?
to some extent, yeah.
So a lot of people, I mean, digital babysitters have kind of just become this for a couple generations now, that's been a thing, whether it's TV or video games or whatever. So what would you say to people who are concerned that if I do this, parent has to become the clown, the jester that is constantly entertaining and filling up for every minute that's created by this void of electronics?
I would say they're more creative. They
Our
come
kids
up-
were,
Yeah, they'll come up with more things to do than they could do while stuck on screens.
And
It won't be once in a while it's a problem, but
Yeah, and then maybe the first couple weeks while they're adjusting. Right?
that was rough, but
yes,
by and large, like, absolutely worth it. There were withdrawals. There were moments that were harder socio-emotionally than they had been before we went off screens. There were moments that I was like, this is awful. But because we were committed to the science and the research behind this trial, and I would say because our family needed it so desperately, we needed to see the results that were promised by these scientific studies and the therapists, that we were willing to see it through, even through those moments that were... I mean, Brother Hibbert already didn't have hair, but I will admit to, like, losing hair over this, like, pulling it out, I was just beside myself. At the beginning, it was so hard. It would have been gone.
Your beard was looking a little patchy during those
little
weeks.
patchy, yeah. But it was rough. But about 3 weeks in, it was like a switch flipped. For some of the kids that struggle with it the most, that's when the switch flipped. It took 3 weeks, but after that, things were so much better. I don't think we watched a movie or a TV show through Christmas. We went to my parents' house for Christmas and they had a show on, and the kids were like, this is weird. Why are they just sitting there? Why don't we do something? Like, they could not grasp that Grandma and Grandpa were sitting there. And then they didn't know our TV worked. They didn't even know our TV worked because we just moved to a new house. They thought our TV was broken until June of this year because we never turned it on. And so they didn't, they had no idea that the TV even worked, which I thought was hilarious.
And now we just will watch. Lately, we haven't been watching really anything together, but for a long time, we would just watch for an hour or two on the weekends.
Yeah.
And that was enough.
Yeah.
And it had to be together as a family. It was not just one kid choosing a show and watching a show, and then an hour later a different kid gets to choose. It was like, we watch a show together as a family, or we don't need to watch it at all. Because it's this isn't something that you need. It's not something that is going to make a big impact in your life. There are things that you can learn. I get that. But I don't know. It wasn't a healthy thing that we were seeing happen in our house. And so those are some of the changes that we kept going, again, until about September, October. Then we started getting lazy, and we're seeing the repercussions from it.
But to this day, some of our kids, we say, hey, you want to have a family movie? And some of them will say, yeah, I think I'd rather play games. Let's just play games together.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and you were talking earlier about how some kids can handle more screens than others. And, we talked to some people earlier on that were like, well, I don't want to punish my child who can handle more by saying no because there's a child in the home that's more sensitive to it. And I think it's unfortunate to look at it that way because you're not punishing them. If you have a child that can tolerate something better than someone else, you've got kids with a high pain threshold. But that doesn't mean that by withholding the thing that's inflicting pain that you're somehow punishing them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, nobody is going to be harmed by less of this thing. That's a benefit, right? They have more time for the creativity, for developing real relationships. So we've kind of taken the approach in our family, we're going to err on the side of the most sensitive. And what is it that the others are missing out on? Time wasting, creativity robbing, relationship stealing things, distractions. So
yes, it overstimulates your brain.
Yeah,
makes it hard to concentrate.
Yeah, so we have to be careful to not look at screens as like an inherent right that you're depriving them of. Yeah, because it just isn't, and it hasn't been for the majority of human history.
I think the other thing is, with the mentality of I don't want to withhold screens from those that can tolerate it, because thinking like that might be a punishment or something. Instead, it's as a family, if you're pulling together and you are helping to serve the person that is the most sensitive to it, you're showing a united front as a family. And I think then it's not like, well, I can handle it better than you, so I get screen time and you don't. Instead, it's more, we're in this together, and we know that it's not healthy, period. It's not serving us, period, whether some can tolerate it or not. And then you're growing together in this unified front that I think is beautiful.
Amen. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I think we're about out of time. But and for those who are debating and wondering if this is for you, there is not a single person in the school, parent, child, or otherwise that won't benefit from this. So good luck.